French philosopher Jacques Derrida once said about the archives that instead of, and more than a thing of the past, the archives should call into question the coming of the future. The case of the ICTR Archives allows to see how this works in practice. The government of Rwanda, dominated by former Tutsi rebels, wants to have the archives. The lawyers who defended or still defend the genocide suspects, mostly former Hutu leaders, say that that would be a nonsense. At least that is the view of Canadian lawyer and law professor André Tremblay, who also sees how the past, the present, and the future come in play with the ICTR archives.
Le présent va se continuer. Je dois parler du futur, moi, et je dois vous parler de ce qui nous attend. Et je vais vous faire un avis. Je sais maintenant qu'il y a dans les archives du tribunal les rapports de ce qu'on appelle le Special Investigation Unit. Le procureur n'a jamais voulu admettre l'existence, de cette unité spéciale. Et dans le coffre-fort du bureau du procureur, il y a des documents exculpatoires qui n'ont jamais été divulgués à la défense. Et le pire qui puisse arriver, c'est qu'on envoie les archives qui contiennent les rapports d'enquête sur les crimes du FPR à qui qu'elles soient. C'est une possibilité. Je vous mets en garde, il faut vraiment que cela ne se produise pas.
Mandated by his colleagues, Kenyan lawyer Gershon Otachi Bonamwa explored the different options from the defense perspective. During the 14 to 16 November 2009 conference in The Hague, he discussed some of these options and other issues relating to the ICTR archives.
There are many on the continent of Africa who insist that the ICTR archives must remain somewhere on African soil. But of course the question would be, where in Africa? I have tried to explore the possibilities, the various locations, and you see that in my paper. And one of the proposals that has been made, now this is not strictly in terms of location, but in terms of what organization, what institution would take charge of the archives. According to the United Nations, any archives, any material that can be classified as archives that is generated in the course of any organ of the UN belongs to the United Nations. Now, in that context, it will be difficult to envisage a scenario such as been proposed to have, for instance, the archives taken over by the East African community. Because the question that arises then is it the Eastern community that is in charge of the archives, or is it the United Nations that has delegated the duty of taking care of the archives to the EAC? But in my paper, I've also pointed out the challenges, even supposing yourself to find, let the Eastern community take charge of the archives. I've set out the challenges to this. And amongst the challenges is again the fact that Rwanda is a member of the EAC. And Rwanda, of course, would obviously bully the other member countries to have the archives eventually in Kigali. If the issue, the argument regarding proximity is important, so that you're saying proximity to the area of conflict, let the ICTR archives remain somewhere in Africa. We have the ICC, which has so far indicted a number of people from various locations in Africa, and continues to do so, including possibility of indictment of some people from my country, Kenya, in the near future. Are we going to have a scenario where will this argument actually apply, because the ICC is located at The Hague? Will you be saying that the archives relating to the situation in Darfur should be transferred to Africa, somewhere in Africa, Central African Republic, the same thing, and so on and so forth? Or if the ICC as archives are going to remain at The Hague, at that one location, then what is the logic in saying that archives should be located as closely as possible to the area of conflict?
It has been reported that the UN Security Council will have to decide about the fate of those archives, including their location, their accessibility, their publicness, and the fate of confidential documents, and so on. However, no date has so far been announced for the final decision. This archive issue pushes to believe that the ICTR will have been more than just a court in Rwanda's collective memories.